Book 8, Chapter 7. Such was the story of Pontianus. But thou, O Lord, while he was speaking, didst turn me round towards myself, taking me from behind my back, where I had placed me, unwilling to observe myself, and setting me before my own face, that I might see how foul I was, how crooked and defiled, bespotted and ulcerous. And I beheld and stood aghast, and whither to flee from myself I found not. And if I sought to turn mine eye off from myself, he went on with his relation, and thou again didst set me over against myself, and thou thrustest me before my eyes, that I might find out mine iniquity and hate it. I had known it, but made as though I saw it not, winked at it, and forgot it. But now the more ardently I loved those, whose healthful affections I heard of, that they had resigned themselves wholly to Thee to be cured, the more did I abhor myself, when compared with them. For many of my years, some 12, had now run out with me since my 19th, when, upon the reading of Cicero's Hortensius, I was stirred to an earnest love of wisdom, and still I was deferring to reject mere earthly felicity, and give myself to search out that, whereof not the finding only, but the very search, was to be preferred to the treasures and kingdoms of the world, though already found, and to the pleasures of the body, though spread around me at my will. But I wretched, most wretched, in the very commencement of my earthly youth, had begged chastity of Thee, and said, Give me chastity and continency, only not yet. For I feared lest Thou shouldst hear me soon, and soon cure me of the desire of concupiscence, which I wished to have satisfied rather than extinguished. And I had wandered through crooked ways in a sacrilegious superstition, not indeed assured thereof, but as preferring it to the others, which I did not seek religiously, but opposed maliciously. And I had thought, that I therefore deferred from day to day to reject the hopes of this world, and follow Thee only, because there did not appear aught certain, whether to direct my course. And now was the day come, wherein I was to be laid bare to myself, and my conscience was to upbraid me. Where art thou now, my tongue? Thou saidst, that for an uncertain truth thou likest not to cast off the baggage of vanity. Now it is certain, and yet that burden still oppresseth thee, while they who neither have so worn themselves out with seeking it, nor for 10 years and more have been thinking thereon, have had their shoulders lightened, and received wings to fly away. Thus was I gnawed within, and exceedingly confounded with a horrible shame, while Pontianus was still speaking. And he having brought to a close his tale and the business he came for, went his way, and I into myself. What said I not against myself? With what scourges of condemnation lashed I not my soul, that it might follow me, striving to go after Thee? Yet it drew back, refused but excused not itself. All arguments were spent and confuted. There remained a mute shrinking, and she feared, as she would death, to be restrained from the flux of that custom, whereby she was wasting to death. Chapter 8. Then in this great contention of my inward dwelling, which I had strongly raised against my soul, in the chamber of my heart, troubled in mind and countenance, I turned upon Alypius. What ails us? I exclaim. What is it? What hurtest thou? The unlearned start up, and take heaven by force, and we with our learning, and without heart, lo, where we wallow in flesh and blood. Are we ashamed to follow because others are gone before, and not ashamed not even to follow? Some such words I uttered, and my fever of mind tore me away from him, while he, gazing on me in astonishment, kept silence. For it was not my wonted tone, and my forehead, cheeks, eyes, colour, tone of voice, spake my mind more than the words I uttered. A little garden there was to our lodging, which we had the use of, as of the whole house, for the master of the house, our host, was not living there. Thither had the tumult of my breast hurried me, where no man might hinder the hot contention wherein I had engaged with myself, until it should end as thou knewest, I knew not. Only I was healthfully distracted and dying, to live. Knowing what evil thing I was, and not knowing what good thing I was shortly to become. I retired then into the garden, and Alypius on my steps, for his presence did not lessen my privacy, or how could he forsake me so disturbed? We sat down as far removed as might be from the house. I was troubled in spirit, most vehemently indignant that I had entered not into thy will and covenant, O my God, which all my bones cried out unto me to enter, and praised it to the skies. And therein we enter not by ships, or chariots, or feet, no, move not so far as I had come from the house to that place where we were sitting. For, not to go only, but to go in thither was nothing else but to will to go, but to will resolutely and thoroughly, not to turn and toss, this way and that, a maimed and half-divided will, struggling, with one part sinking as another rose. Lastly, in the very fever of my irresoluteness, I made with my body many such motions as men sometimes would, but cannot, if either they have not the limbs, or these be bound with bands, weakened with infirmity, or any other way hindered. Thus, if I tore my hair, beat my forehead, if locking my fingers I clasped my knee, I willed, I did it. But I might have willed, and not done it, if the power of motion in my limbs had not obeyed. So many things then I did, when to will was not in itself to be able, and I did not what both I longed incomparably more to do, and which soon after, when I should will, I should be able to do, because soon after, when I should will thoroughly. For in these things the ability was one with the will, and to will was to do, and yet it was not done. And more easily did my body obey the weakest willing of my soul, in moving its limbs at its nod, than the soul obeyed itself to accomplish in the will alone this momentous will. Chapter 9. Whence is this monstrousness, and to what end? Let thy mercy gleam that I may ask, if so be the secret penalties of men, and those dark pangs of the sons of Adam may perhaps answer me. Whence is this monstrousness, and to what end? The mind commands the body, and it obeys instantly. The mind commands itself, and is resisted. The mind commands the hand to be moved, and such readiness is there, that command is scarce distinct from obedience. Yet the mind is mind, the hand is body. The mind commands the mind, its own self, to will, and yet it doth not. Whence this monstrousness, and to what end? It commands itself, I say, to will, and would not command unless it willed, and what it commands is not done. But it willeth not entirely, therefore doth it not command entirely. For so far forth it commandeth as it willeth, and so far forth the thing is commanded, not done, as it willeth not. For the will commandeth that there be a will, not another but itself. But it doth not command entirely, therefore what it commandeth is not. For were the will entire, it would not even command it to be, because it would already be. It is therefore no monstrousness partly to will, partly to nil, but a disease of the mind, that it doth not wholly rise, by truth borne up, borne down by custom. And therefore are there two wills, for that one of them is not entire, and what the one lacketh, the other hath. Chapter 10. Let them perish from thy presence, O God, as perish vain talkers and seducers of the soul, who observing that in deliberating there were two wills, affirm that there are two minds in us of two kinds, one good, the other evil. Themselves are truly evil when they hold these evil things, and themselves shall become good when they hold the truth, and assent unto the truth, that thy apostle may say to them, Ye were sometimes darkness, but now light in the Lord. But they, wishing to be light, not in the Lord, but in themselves, imagining the nature of the soul to be that which God is, are made more gross darkness through a dreadful arrogancy, for that they went back farther from thee, the true light that enlighteneth every man that cometh into the world. Take heed what ye say, and blush for shame. Draw near unto him, and be enlightened, and your faces shall not be ashamed. Myself, when I was deliberating upon serving the Lord my God now, as I had long purposed it It was I who willed, I who nilled, I myself. I neither willed entirely, nor nilled entirely. Therefore was I at strife with myself, and rent asunder by myself. And this rent befell me against my will, and yet indicated not the presence of another mind, but the punishment of mine own. Therefore it was no more I that wrought it, but sin that dwelt in me, the punishment of a sin more freely committed, in that I was a son of Adam. For if there be so many contrary natures as there be conflicting wills, there shall now be not two only, but many. If a man deliberate, whether he should go to their conventicle, or to the theatre, these Manichees cry out, Behold, here are two natures, one good draws this way, another bad draws back that way. For whence else is this hesitation between conflicting wills? But I say, that both be bad, that which draws to them, as that which draws back to the theatre. But they believe not that will to be other than good, which draws to them. What then if no one of us should deliberate, and amid the strife of his two wills, be in a strait, whether he should go to the theatre or to our church? Would not these Manichees also be in a strait what to answer? For either they must confess, which they fain would not, that the will which leads to our church is good, as well as theirs, who have received and are held by the mysteries of theirs, or they must suppose two evil natures, and two evil souls, conflicting in one man. And it would not be true, which they say, that there is one good and another bad, or they must be converted to the truth, and no more deny, that where one deliberates, one soul fluctuates between contrary wills. Let them no more say then, when they perceive two conflicting wills in one man, that the conflict is between two contrary souls, of contrary substances, from two contrary principles, one good and the other bad. For thou, O true God, dost disprove, check, and convict them. As when, both wills being bad, one deliberates, whether he should kill a man by poison, or by the sword, whether he should seize this or that estate of another's, when he cannot both, whether he should purchase pleasure by luxury, or keep his money by covetousness, whether he go to the circus, or to the theatre, if both be open on one day, or thirdly, to rob another's house, if he have the opportunity, or fourthly, to commit adultery, if at the same time he have the means thereof also. All these meeting together in the same juncture of time, and all being equally desired, which cannot at one time be acted, for they rend the mind amid four, or even, amid the vast variety of things desired, more conflicting wills, nor do they yet allege that there are so many diverse substances. So also in wills which are good. For I ask them, Is it good to take pleasure in reading the Apostle, or good to take pleasure in a sober psalm, or good to discourse on the gospel? They will answer to each, It is good. What then if all give equal pleasure and all at once? Do not diverse wills distract the mind, while he deliberates, which he should rather choose? Yet all they are good, and are at variance till one be chosen, whither the one entire will may be born, which before was divided into many. Thus also, when above eternity delights us, and the pleasure of temporal goods holds us down below, it is the same soul which willeth not this or that with an entire will, and therefore is rent asunder with grievous perplexities, while out of truth it sets this first, but out of habit it sets not that aside. Chapter 11. Thus soul-sick was I, and tormented, accusing myself much more severely than my wont, rolling and turning me in my chain, till that there were wholly broken, whereby I now was but just, but still was held. And thou, O Lord, presseth upon me in my upward parts by a severe mercy, redoubling the lashes of fear and shame, lest I should again give way, and not bursting that same slight remaining tie, it should recover strength, and bind me the faster. For I said within myself, Be it done now, be it done now. And as I spake, I all but enacted it. I all but did it, and did it not. Yet sunk not back to my former state, but kept my stand hard by, and took breath. And I essayed again, and wanted somewhat less of it, and somewhat less, and all but touched and laid hold of it, and yet came not at it, nor touched, nor laid hold of it, hesitating to die to death, and live to life. And the worse whereto I was inured, prevailed more with me than the better whereto I was inured. At the very moment wherein I was to become other than I was, the nearer it approached me, the greater horror did it strike into me. Yet did it not strike me back, nor turn me away, but held me in suspense. The very toy of toys, and vanity of vanities, my ancient mistresses, still held me. They plucked my fleshly garment, and whispered softly, Dost thou cast us off? And from that moment shall we no more be with thee for ever? And from that moment shall not this or that be lawful for thee for ever? And what was it which they suggested in that I said, this or that? What did they suggest, O my God? Let thy mercy turn it away from the soul of thy servant. What defilements did they suggest? What shame? And now I much less than half heard them, and not openly shewing themselves and contradicting me, but muttering as it were behind my back, and privily plucking me, as I was departing, but to look back on them. Yet they did not retard me, so that I hesitated to burst and shake myself free from them, and to spring over whither I was called, a violent habit saying to me, Thinkest thou, thou canst live without them? But now it spake very faintly, for on that side whither I had set my face, and whither I trembled to go, there appeared to me the chaste dignity of constancy, serene, yet not relaxedly gay, honestly alluring me to come, and doubt not, and stretching forth to receive and embrace me, her holy hands full of multitudes of good examples. There were so many young men and maidens here, a multitude of youth and every age, grave widows and aged virgins, and continence herself in all, not barren, but a fruitful mother of children of joys, by thee her husband, a lord. And she smiled on me with a persuasive mockery, as would she say, Canst thou not what these use, what these maidens can? Or can they either in themselves, and not rather in the Lord their God? The Lord their God gave me unto them. Why standest thou in thyself, and so standest not? Cast thyself upon him. Fear not, he will not withdraw himself, that thou shouldest fall. Cast thyself fearlessly upon him. He will receive, and will heal thee. And I blushed exceedingly, for that I yet heard the muttering of those toys, and hung in suspense. And she again seemed to say, Stop thine ears against those thy unclean members of the earth, that they may be mortified. They tell thee of delights, but not as doth the law of the Lord thy God. This controversy in my heart was self against self only. But Alypius, sitting close by my side, in silence waited the issue of my unwonted emotion. Chapter 12. But when a deep consideration had from the secret bottom of my soul drawn together and heaped up all my misery in the sight of my heart, there arose a mighty storm, bringing a mighty shower of tears, which that I might pour forth wholly in its natural expressions, I rose from Alypius. Solitude was suggested to me as fitter for the business of weeping, so I retired so far that even his presence could not be a burthen to me. Thus it was then with me, and he perceiving something of it, for something I suppose I had spoken, wherein the tones of my voice appeared choked with weeping, and so had risen up. He then remained where we were sitting, most extremely astonished. I cast myself down I know not how, under a certain fig tree, giving full vent to my tears, and the floods of mine eyes gushed out, an acceptable sacrifice to thee. And, not indeed in these words, yet to this purpose spake I much unto thee. And thou, O Lord, how long, Lord, wilt thou be angry? For ever? Remember not our former iniquities, for I felt that I was held by them. I sent up these sorrowful words, How long? Tomorrow and tomorrow? Why not now? Why not is there this hour an end to my uncleanness? So was I speaking and weeping in the most bitter contrition of my heart, when lo, I heard from a neighbouring house a voice, as of a boy or girl, I know not, chanting and oft repeating, Take up and read, take up and read. Instantly my countenance altered, I began to think most intently whether children were wont in any kind of play to sing such words, nor could I remember ever to have heard the like. So checking the torrent of my tears, I arose, interpreting it to be no other than a command from God to open the book and read the first chapter I should find. For I had heard of Anthony, that coming in during the reading of the Gospel, he received the admonition, as if what was being read was spoken to him, Go, sell all that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. And by such oracle he was forthwith converted unto thee. Eagerly then I returned to the place where Alypius was sitting, for there I had laid the volume of the Apostle, when I arose thence. I seized, opened, and in silence read that section on which my eyes first fell. Not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh, in concupiscence. No further would I read, nor needed I, for instantly at the end of this sentence, by a light as it were of serenity infused into my heart, all the darkness of doubt vanished away. Then putting my finger between, or some other mark, I shut the volume, and with a calmed countenance made it known to Alypius. And what was wrought in him, which I knew not, he thus showed me. He asked to see what I had read. I showed him, and he looked even further than I had read, and I knew not what followed. This followed, Him that is weak in faith, receive, which he applied to himself, and disclosed to me. And by this admonition he was strengthened, and by a good resolution and purpose, and most corresponding to his character, wherein he did always very far differ from me, for the better, without any turbulent delay he joined me. Thence we go in to my mother. We tell her. She rejoiceth. We relate in order how it took place. She leaps for joy, and triumpheth, and blesseth thee, who art able to do above that which we ask or think. For she perceived that thou hast given her more for me than she was wont to beg by her pitiful and most sorrowful groanings. For thou convertest me unto thyself, so that I sought neither wife nor any hope in this world, standing in that rule of faith, where thou hast showed me unto her in a vision so many years before. And thou didst convert her mourning into joy, much more plentiful than she had desired, and in a much more precious and purer way than she erst required, by having grandchildren of my body. End of Book 8.